Today, we'd like to welcome Joan Wagner to the NFHS Legends of Officiating. Joan, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We'll get started with your questions right away. First and foremost, what role did interscholastic sports play in your life growing up?
They were everything. I loved all sports, and I was lucky to have interscholastic athletics in my elementary school. We played softball, field hockey, and basketball against the other elementary schools. And that's in the 50s.
So I'm going to ask you a question that's not scripted, but something that, while I've got you on, I think is important. As you know, it's the 50th anniversary this year of Title IX. What does Title IX mean to you?
Well, I think it has given women many more opportunities to participate. It's evened out the number of sports, in a school or a college. I think we still are, as women, not deemed as important as men. And you can see it, like Villanova's in the basketball playoffs, and so are the women. Well, the men had 10 seconds of visuals, and the women just had an announcement that they were in it. So we're still struggling.
I agree. It begs the question of the next 50 years and how that'll look. So hopefully strides continue to be made. What made you decide to become an official?
Well, I love sports, as I said, and there was no way I was going to stop when I quit playing. My dad was a soccer official. And so that was the natural thing for me to do, go right into officiating, which I did and did for many years.
When did you realize that officiating was something that you really wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Well, I loved it. That was number one. I was getting exercise, I was getting a little pay for it. That's always nice. And it fit in well with my family as it was growing. So I loved the friends. It was just wonderful. It didn't take all day. It was an afternoon, and it was just perfect.
What is the most memorable moment of your officiating career on the field?
Well, I probably have a few, and starting with the first time I did the state championship in field hockey. That was awesome. And then I was very lucky to do a championship in NCAA. And I also was very fortunate to be able to work a championship game in our World Cup in Lacrosse. So they were all really, really exciting times.
Sounds like it. That's amazing. And with regard to officiating, what is your most memorable experience in your career off the field?
I think it's probably been working with younger umpires. And I have had the lovely opportunity to do that not only in our country, but around the world. And from holding a koala in Australia and riding a camel in the Mideast, reffing on a dirt field in Japan. My opportunities have been amazing. It was just the right time and the right place for me.
What would you tell a newer official who is about to quit officiating to keep them in the game?
First of all, I tell them without refs, there's no game. And so we really need them. And I think that other important thing is to understand that don't let the comments from the sideline rule your confidence. And I just think that's one of the toughest things we have to deal with today, because it's not only a disgruntled coach, but parents that think they know it all. And so we just need to support these young officials and encourage them and share the problems that we've had. And let them know we've been vulnerable too. But my friends and I often say, what other profession are you in where people holler at you? And so we've got a good camaraderie. And especially if we travel together to games, oh, we can discuss the games and really help each other. So I would say hang in there. It's all for the kids.
How important is it to have mentors as an official? And what words of wisdom do you have for those individuals who serve in the role of a mentor?
Well, I think mentors are extremely important. And I've seen good ones and I've seen those that have torn young officials apart. And so we need to tell these young folks what they're doing right, encourage them to keep on, to study. And we need to make sure the mentors are kind. We need somebody to replace us when we retire. And so we need to give these young people all the incentive and encouragement that we possibly can, because it is a tough profession.
It most certainly is that. And who was or who were your officiating mentors?
Well, I would say my dad, of course, was my first mentor. And I went to many a game with him and experienced what it's like to be the child of official, especially if somebody hollers at him. The first time that happened, I thought, oh my goodness. But at any rate, he certainly was a great mentor, as was a friend, Dot Chalikian, who was probably in her 70s when I got into officiating. And she just took me under her wing and encouraged me and watched me and gave me lots of hints. And so I just think mentors are just invaluable, especially in this profession.
What was a failure you had in officiating that you look back at and realized that it actually helped you long term?
Oh boy, it was early in my career. I was doing a high school field hockey game and play was in the circle and I see a defensive foul and I blow my whistle as the ball goes into the goal. So that was like, oh my goodness, I wanted to swallow my whistle. But I learned two things. I learned, number one, don't ref with your whistle in your mouth. So I went right to a hand whistle. And I also learned that day that when you make an error like that, you have to move on, because if you let that eat at you, you're going to miss the next three calls. So we all have errors. And I remember Jillian Rattray, who was the hockey coach at Penn State for many years, told me once, I never expect the officials to call a perfect game until I can expect my players to play a perfect game. And that really, I just have shared that with more people because I thought that was really kind and honest.
It's always great to hear that from a coach, because we know that the expectations of officials are always very lofty. You're supposed to be perfect when you get there and improve as the game goes on. And that's just not how it works. So it's one
Right.
of when a coach has that kind of grace with you, that's exceptional.
Oh, right.
What do you find the most rewarding aspect of officiating?
I think the joy of still participating in a sport that I played and loved and watching the sport grow, that's been wonderful. Getting exercising, and I always say, I was getting paid to exercise. What could be more wonderful? I didn't have to join a club, and I ran up and down the field, and it just, and the friends, the many friends. It has just been wonderful. Even to this day, I'll be at the shore, and I'll have some kid come up to me and say, "Are you a ref?" And I say, "Yes." And then I ask them what color uniform they wear. Then I can remember what team they were on. But I mean, that's amazing, you know, after all these years that the contacts you have.
I'm always astounded when officials have worked for a long time, thinking about the number of student athletes' lives they've touched and impacted and influenced along the way, because I don't know that officials get into it even thinking about that. And then when you especially as officials retire and you're kind of looking at the number of years they've worked and you just start going, okay, that's how many players per game times how many games times how many.
Right.
It's just, it's really mind blowing to be able to be in a role that allows you that opportunity. It's definitely one of the most special things about officiating all sports.
Oh, right. And I've reffed kids from junior high through college and onto the World Cup team. So, I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's outstanding. You start officiating the kids of kids that you officiated, and it's just like, I've been around for a while. That's a
Right, right.
What would you say to a fan in the third row of a lacrosse match who is driving younger officials away? Not that would ever happen, but.
Well, it's tough on the younger level. In the high school or in the college level, you have usually somebody at the field and you can say that person doesn't calm down, get rid of them. But I would say I would remind somebody, if I had an opportunity to talk to them, that these young people are out here trying to learn a craft and they need all the support they can get. They don't care who wins the game. They just want to learn how to officiate. And we need to support them. If we don't have officials moving in to replace everyone else, we'll have no games. And so I just think, be kind. I think we can't use that word too much. Be kind, understand what's going on out here. Your kids don't want to hear you bad mouthing an official, and we're trying to be better behaved. So I would say, encourage that young person, give them some space. They'll be better the next time you see them.
Absolutely. In terms of officiating, if you could tell your younger self to do something differently, what would that be, if anything?
Don't have rabbit ears. I think it's always wise to listen to a few comments, but if they get too much, then close it out. Don't dwell on your mistakes. I just think have somebody you can discuss your game with constantly. And being in the Philadelphia area, I was always able to do that because, especially once we started traveling a little further, I always had a partner in the car, and oh man, we would rehash that game on the way home. What could we have done better? And that was an awesome way to grow in the sport. And I just think I think I would just have to learn that is part of the game. You can't be great from the beginning. You learn all through your life, all through your career.
How true is that? How much learning goes on in the car on the way home from a game? I think that's the best clinic there is. That's the best practice there is that post-game debrief with your crew on the way from wherever you were coming from. There's just so much knowledge. Some of my favorite moments were riding with crews and just listening in. It was like, gosh, I didn't learn this in a year and I just learned it in 20 minutes. So it was
right.
A really neat experience.
Right.
And then, Joan, we have a final question for you, and this is really the NFHS looking for your help. As you mentioned, we do have a shortage of officials, and that's in all sports across the country. So if you had one opportunity to convince people to become officials, what would you tell them?
I guess I would first say this is the greatest opportunity you have to be active in a game you love. And you can work different seasons, and I would always say work all the sports you rep or you played. I mean, I loved being able to do hockey in the fall and lacrosse in the spring. Loved it. You get exercise, great exercise. You get paid a little for it. That's great. But most of all, the players need officials, and we need the officials to keep the games fair and safe. And so I think there's nothing more rewarding than working with young people and watching them evolve in the game. I can just say that after all these years that I officiated, between my two sports, it was like 97 years. Yeah, 50 some in hockey, 47 in lacrosse. And there, it was just a great way to live my life. Great friends, you have great friends, you have opportunities to travel. It's just a marvelous way to live your life.
Fantastic. That number caught me off guard, by the way. I was like, whoa. And
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of that went by in a blink of an eye. So it's great to see that you still have that same love for it all those years later. And
Oh my gosh, yeah.
the fact that you're paying it forward in this way to officials across the country and in all sports means the world to us. And on behalf of the National Federation and the over 200,000 officials that we have in our ranks in all sports, and of course, 200,000 sounds like a lot, but we need more.
Yeah.
So we just thank you for your time and thank you for your willingness to share your knowledge and your inspirational message and the importance of officiating with all of us. It means so much, and we appreciate your efforts and your contributions over the years and now. So thank you, Joan, for joining us today.
Well, my pleasure.